All right, hey students, we are going through the instructional framework for fitness education and physical education. This is a document that is essentially a support guide, not necessarily a position statement, but more of a curricular map. That's the best way I can describe this. The link is on there in the PDF, which you're going to have in your notes for you to download it, and you're going to be using it throughout this class. So be ready to have that handy. So first of all, we have to ask this question: what is fitness education in PE? And the key word is education. And so we need to make sure that we're not just having our kids do fitness, we're not just planning workouts for our students in PE. It's a very clear instructional and learning process, and fitness movements just happen to be one of the mechanisms we do it. We're really using it to teach knowledge, skills, and values. And then, of course, promote regular participation in physical activity. So in PE class, it's understood that even though we're teaching knowledge, skills, and values, which tend to be in our standard number 2, our knowledge standard, skills will be in standard number 1, values are going to be our affective standards in 4 and 5. It's still meant to be an active experience, not necessarily the entire time, like start of class, end of class, but it is meant to be still a dominant portion. And then we also want to promote elements of what I would consider holistic, healthy behaviors. And when we say holistic, we mean what else is involved when it comes to being healthy and enhancing your health, or having health enhancing fitness. So that is going to mean things like nutrition. It is going to mean things like recovery. It's going to mean your attitude. And also, for especially our older students, is going to be our consumer education. So knowing what's a myth, what's reality, knowing what's bro science versus real science, and even knowing what science is and the limitations of science in our field of kinesiology. So a few extra things. And then how does this fit into the bigger picture of our job as PE teachers, movement educators, to help develop our students' physical literacy? So we're focusing on standard 3, which is, here we go, it's listed here. Basically, we want to make sure that our students can achieve and maintain health enhancing level of physical activity and health enhancing level of physical fitness. And they are different things, even though we use them quite a bit. Physical activity is just the movement itself. Fitness is a measurable type of level of our performance, and often in physical activity. So we've got our definition here, and key thing we have to remember about physical literacy. So in this context of achieving and maintaining health enhancing level of activity and fitness, we need to be teaching motivation around health enhancing activity and fitness, confidence, competence, and then making sure that they understand how everything fits together. How do you make it part of our lifestyle, or their lifestyle too? So background on this document. So I abbreviated IFFEPE, Instructional Framework for Fitness Education and Physical Education. So I mentioned it's a content map. That's the best I can describe it. It's not a curriculum. It's not standards, it's based on the standards. And so it's kind of the in-between thing between standards and curriculum, or between grade level outcomes and an actual curriculum. It's kind of a guide for you. It's developmental level focus. So you're going to see it uses grade bands, not individual grades. And we do have to keep in mind, even though it's grade bands, it still doesn't mean that just because we're in a grade band that's focusing on, first or second grade, does not mean that all kids who are in first and second grade are going to be the same. So we do have to keep in mind that uses those out of convenience. But one thing I do like is that it uses these grade bands as opposed to individual grades. It does show us that there's some range. And I also like that because it helps us understand that in the real world in physical education, like middle school, for example, say it's 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, in your district or in your school, you may not have PE every single year. Unfortunately, the kids may not. That just might be your current reality. Even though you might be advocating that they take it every year, you might offer it every year, we know that there's things that get in the way. So I like how this uses that middle school band. And if you are lucky, and if you're advocating for it, and if your school prioritizes PE more than one time in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, you can incorporate more of those elements in the content map. Another thing I like is that just like the grade level outcomes, it's progressive. So it takes you essentially from pre-KK all the way beyond 12th grade, beyond high school. It has this higher education category. And I like to say that higher ed category can be used for an advanced level high school PE, or if you're programming additional fitness for the community, or we also see it as the guideline for any sort of college level fitness and wellness type of class. It does have a focus on health related fitness. So that's something that we see throughout the PE space. We're focusing on health enhancing or health related fitness. It does not mean that we do not focus on the skill related components. Those are essential to movement. And especially if we're looking, in other parts of movement, like playing games, playing sport, we need to have those skill related levels of fitness be worked on so that we can combine those with motor skills to be successful. But it does have that health enhancing focus. And then it's developed by a large diverse team of experts. So PE teachers, pedagogy specialists, so teaching specialists, youth fitness specialists, so not only PE people, but also people that know fitness and study that. And then it's also research and literature based. So what I like and what's important for us to keep in mind is this is an outcomes based map. It doesn't tell us what games to play. It doesn't categorize it by what equipment, so it's not a kettlebell category and a barbell category, or what lessons that we need to teach or types of themes. It uses domains to categorize it, but anytime where it doesn't give us straight up games, it gives freedom and creativity to the teacher, which I think that's a huge pro of it. It challenges us to find activities and learning experiences that are relevant and are exciting, culturally relevant for the type of population we have, and even just geographically relevant for where we are and what equipment we have access to. And then we need to keep in mind, this is not meant to be the entire PE program. This is meant to be a component of the PE program. So the fitness education document, that's also supposed to complement our grade level outcomes, which talk about aquatics and outdoor pursuits and games and team building and everything else that we see, motor skills for our younger kids. So keep that in mind. This is not the whole package deal, but in high school, we do often see this as our content map for our freshmen. Often it's a freshman required personal fitness class. So keep in mind, sometimes we do see it. We think of the total physical education program. We think of the whole K through 12 curriculum, or I think of in high school, I like the idea of high schools having options and having electives. They might have a required class that maybe the school values fitness and they're basing it off of this, but then there's also electives that they can take later that might be related to various types of sport, aquatics, lifeguard or CPR training or certification, mind body things like yoga and meditation, or advanced levels of fitness training or sport performance training. So question for you that you're going to see later in a discussion is, how important do you think fitness related content is in PE? So I just said fitness is supposed to be a subcomponent of the total program. So obviously I get that. But we are seeing a ton of schools who have prioritized fitness as really their main thing, especially at the secondary level. And so let's hone this question in at the secondary level. How important is fitness related content? Do you think it should be the main focus? Do you think it should be after sport or after outdoor activity? Where do you value it, and where do you think it best fits the needs of kids? Curious what your thoughts are on that. All right, so with that said, we're looking at it as a subcomponent. So we know we're trying to increase knowledge. So that's through understanding application, that's activities, that's labs, inquiry, questions, assessments, hoping to get our students a higher order understanding of what fitness is. And one nice thing is that this framework or this content map does have outcomes that relate to those higher order thinking and higher levels of understanding. It definitely hits on habits and behaviors, so that falls into more of our psychological categories, motivation, valuing freedom, feeling expressive, that's very affective. And then the physical capabilities, so that's their actual ability to do these movements with safety and technical proficiency. So again, if you look at this screen right here, knowledge is our standard number 2, habits and behaviors 3 or 4 and 5, and physical capacity, that's straight up standard 1. And of course, we're talking about fitness. So now looking at this document, say we open it up, I definitely recommend printing it because we are going to be using it several times. So this can be used to support other types of content. So let's say, especially if you have a block type of schedule, and let's say you have 70-minute PE periods and you have a fitness component every single day, and maybe you have games in addition. So let's say maybe you're doing a unit where you're doing lacrosse, but you are going to have 20 minutes of focus fitness in that lesson, and then you'll move on to whatever your motor skills or the techniques and tactics of lacrosse. So you can pull elements that you're going to use in that fitness component of the class. So that's what it means that it's a partial lesson. So maybe you have a component or portion. You can have a whole lesson be focused on elements from this map. A whole course could be focused on it. But here's the thing, what we want to discourage you to do as much as possible. And the unfortunate reality is this is unfortunately the norm. So we see fitness as a unit still in PE. And you know how I asked that question earlier, how important is fitness to you? One thing we do know, it is quite important to schools. We know physical activity is just the crux of everything, and making sure our kids feel competent and confident. And we know later on in life, after high school, while there are opportunities to play sport and of course do outdoor activity and aquatics, we see the majority, especially in the US, we have a gym kind of culture. The workout culture is super predominant, especially in that early adulthood, late adolescent stage. And so that's another reason why we want to make sure our students are ready for what's next. But why I say we don't want to have fitness as just an isolated unit, say we have a lacrosse unit and speedball unit, and then fitness unit is in life and for health. We don't want to have fitness just be a small little sliver of what our life is. We don't want it to be, you know, this 5-year span in our 20s, and then fitness isn't a priority at all before or after. We want to reinforce the concept that it's every day. It's part of our lifestyle, and we can work on fitness and maybe play tennis at the park with our friends, and we can work on our overall fitness and maybe, you know, go skiing in the winter. We can work on our fitness and go swimming at the pool. And so seeing fitness almost as this standalone aspect that's always constant. And so we don't want to have it in an isolated unit. We want to have fitness as some level of constant. So that's why you look at the top 3 points, partial lessons, it is included every single day. Full lessons, it's a major focus, or the whole course even. So keep that in mind for later. We don't want to see just a fitness unit. There's a few additional things that are important. So pre-K, we may not have pre-K in the schools that we're teaching in. So our elementary school, for example, might start at kindergarten, but we want to use the pre-K content to support any sort of in-school program. So that might be remedial movement or any before after school activity, anything community-wise. So out-of-school programs is where we would see it too. And I want you to take a second and just think about, well, what are some other uses where you would focus on early childhood, even though you're a PE teacher? Where might you have another connection to early childhood movement? Maybe not necessarily in the school, but what about in the private sector? Another side hustle, another job where you might be working on your own leading movement experiences for very young kids. And then we see 13th through 16th grades. So actually list the grades. So this is essentially post-high school. This could be college. This could be transitional age in a population that may not be typically developing. So individuals with disabilities. And so this could be our advanced high school course possibility, and really hit in the space of, okay, high school gives you a smattering of things, what you really should be competent in. So we also have a priority index. This is at the end, at the very back of the document, and I want you to take a look at this once you're done going through it. In an ideal world, all of the content guidelines should be used, but in the reality is we have a low frequency of PE. So we have elementary PE maybe 2 or 3 days a week or on a 4-day rotating schedule. We often in the US see middle school PE as one time in the 6th through 8th grade period. depending on what other electives the students are taking. And we often see in Michigan, for example, we have 1 credit of health/PE in the high school. And so that really means 1 required PE class, as opposed to our recommendations of daily physical activity the entire way through. So this is written for the ideal, for daily physical activity the whole way through. And so that's one of the challenges is that reality of the time. The other thing is you may not have full school support of fitness outside of PE. So what does this mean? This means you might be in a situation where the school is very, very focused on athletic performance, as many are, and which is great. I know we all love sport and athletics. It's a part of a lot of our lives, but you might see a focus on time, equipment, space, and facilities on athletic use of those facilities and time and equipment, and not on what your students who are in education, who are, general population, maybe some athletes in there too, you may not have a huge focus on what you can use. And so we sometimes see certain equipment, certain parts of facilities being off limits for PE, and that's an unfortunate thing. And we also might see just administrators, parents, even just the general school community might just think, you know what, just get the kids moving, make sure they're busy, happy, and good. We don't really care what we teach. So we're not going to prioritize your time. We're going to take your gym away. Or, we're not going to prioritize having equipment that meets maybe this general population of PE students if it doesn't benefit athletes. So in these situations and in general, we want to look at this priority index, and it's at the back of the document, and it shares at each developmental level of all of the things, all of the domains and the different areas that are listed, which ones do you really want to prioritize at certain ages/stages. So that's really key. One thing I want you to get used to looking at, you'll have a question that'll make you look back there. And the other big thing is it's more than just like, hey, here's all these lifts they should do, or here's all these body weight movements. It doesn't list any lifts. It doesn't list any body weight movements. It doesn't list equipment. That's one of those good things that makes sure we can be creative. And so we want to make sure that it's the idea of cognitive and affective content is just as important and just as much part of our job as teaching the actual techniques that we have going on. And so you may not have every single lesson that you're planning, might not be fully physically active the whole time. Or you might have, if you say you are lucky and you have 5 days a week PE, it's every day for a trimester or a semester, you might have 2 days of the week that are not active at all. You might be in a computer lab. You might be doing our cognitive and affective focus those days. So that's something that's okay. And it's just about balancing the outcomes that are cognitive, affective, and then the physical ones, the psychomotor ones. And then we also see from a curriculum standpoint, a focus on fitness where instead of it's on more of the doing side, it's much more on the concepts-based side. And so this is where we get the classroom type of learning environment, or we might see the lecture days and the lab days. And so that's where the concepts-based part, that's our cognitive focus, really, really comes out and comes through. So next, we've got our domains. So think of domains as major themes. So first one is related to technique, and that is competency in actually doing the movements. So that's kind of like the nuts and bolts. When you think of teaching someone fitness, you're going to teach them how to do a movement, how to do a lift, how to do some element in a workout, how to run with correct technique, how to, do an agility drill, how to do a box jump. That's a technique. That's directly in line with shape standard number 1, which is our doing standard. Then knowledge is a whole domain. Clearly shape number 2, and this relates to our students' understanding of the principles and the strategies. And here's what else I like: their understanding of themselves and their personal needs. There's a little crossover into our affective domain when it talks about understanding their personal needs. But when we say we're looking at fitness assessment, for example, and they're looking at their scores and having to reflect and assess on what would be a good program or good movements or good exercises for them to choose to work on in a training plan to improve their score, that's straight up cognitive. So that goes with our standard 2. Physical activity, definitely standard number 3, just focusing on getting movement in, actually doing movement in the class. The next domain is related to health enhancing fitness. And so that's achieving health enhancing fitness and then maintaining it, and keeping in mind fitness is something that's measurable. Physical activity, yes, we can measure it, by intensity or also by time or pedometer step counts, things like that. But the health enhancing fitness, there's going to be certain tests, whether it's benchmark workouts or, our pacer or fitness gram. It's going to be something specific that's meant to be an assessment to show where you're at and to have students achieve if they're above a certain threshold, or maintain if they're already above, or achieve if they are below a threshold. Then we've got personal and social behaviors, specifically in fitness settings. This is absolutely our standard 4. It relates to responsibility, whether it's personal responsibility for taking ownership of your own health, your own fitness, and also for just your behaviors in a movement space. So think of, at Planet Fitness, where they have the bros and they have the lunk alarm, and, it's a space where they come out and flat out say, like, hey, we don't want you making noise, just that's the value of the gym, take it or leave it. And so making sure that you respect that value when you're in that particular space, that's an example of this domain. And then we have values, straight up affective, standard number 5. So this is a tough one to actually teach. It's something we hope that our students will get, that they appreciate activity and they value movement for the sake of movement and because of the benefits, and they feel motivated and feel like they want to do something, they want to contribute to healthy environments. It's tough to force someone to do that. And so there's ways where we can model it. We can set up the environment as best as we can so it's conducive to it. But that's, in my opinion, one of the hardest ones to teach. It's also harder to assess. Then we have a little bit of nutrition. So we are not nutrition experts, different than in health education or someone who really specializes career-wise as a nutrition coach or a dietitian. However, there are some very, very fundamental basics, and even though sometimes these basics will change as science changes or as diet culture changes, some essentials that we are able to teach and to share with our students. And so this is going to go standard number 2, knowledge. And then our last domain hits on shape, standard number 2, knowledge, and also number 4, which is our personal behaviors. And so this is being able to look into what access do we have to fitness. Do we have, are there good practices going on? Like, say, hey, maybe it's a gym that's nearby and we just did a free class at, and we had a few things happen or a few things we saw that were kind of questionable. It's evaluating that information, the place, products. There's a whole ton of products, especially if we get into the supplement category, which crosses over into nutrition. A whole lot that we need to know so that people don't waste money, so that they're not taken advantage of, and so that they actually are doing movement for their own benefit and for their own health. Because we know the fitness industry, again, post high school, preys upon people's insecurities, their body image insecurities, a socially constructed standard of what fit looks like, and in even a very type A, like, enjoy, love the grind kind of culture related to fitness, where it totally forgets about the aspect of recovery and rest and is only about pushing and pushing limits. And so we need to really make sure that we introduce and help our students critically look at the messaging and common practices in fitness culture that are out there. That is it for this. You're going to have a couple questions on your discussions and your quizzes related to what you had here. And you can also download these notes just as a PDF themselves. Thanks for watching.